Hello semua sekali lagi. Haha. Hari ni saya nak bercerita sikit tentang apa yang you... Okay, no. Wah. Selamat sejahtera dan selamat sepupu. Today I want to talk about Lawrence Wong. Lawrence is the 4th Prime Minister of Singapore after Lee Kuan Yew, Goh Chok Tong, Lee Hsien Loong,
whom I mysteriously met after writing a top comment, by the way. Now, we all know that Lawrence has just called a general election, but
what I really want to talk about is PM Wong's critique of the word pendatang. Depending on who you ask, Singapore and Malaysia are best friends or worse enemies, with one of them having a massive inferiority complex towards one another. No prizes for guessing which one it is. The story is that this former nominated member of parliament named Kelvin Cheng told a bunch of activists from the Monday of Palestine Solidarity, which some of you might remember from some of the videos on this channel, to take a hike and go back to Gaza. PM Wong objected, went up to Ustaz Hasbi and Ustaz Pasuni in Madrasah Al-Junaid and did his whole national unifying role by mentioning Malaysia. I had a good chat with Ustaz Hasbi and Ustaz Pasuni this morning during my visit to Madrasah Al-Junaid. Both had met with Kelvin Cheng earlier and I thanked them for doing so. I also shared with them my perspective that Kelvin Cheng's remarks about telling another Singaporean to take a hike to Gaza was completely insensitive and unacceptable. When we were part of Malaysia, some segments of the Malaysian community called the local Chinese Pendatang foreigners or immigrants. It angered many Chinese who felt that they were second-class citizens. So when Singapore became independent, we resolved never to treat our minorities like that. Today, Singapore is a diverse and yet harmonious society where all races and religions have their place under the sun. Wow. Now that is leadership. But I have to make a correction to Mr. Wong though. See, PM Wong, you said that some segments of the Malaysian community call the local Chinese pendatang. The tense there is incorrect. It shouldn't be past tense because they are calling us pendatang right now. In fact, even right now, as we speak, just one day after Mr. Wong's post, all the Malaysian news outlets have picked it up, started posting it all the way on Facebook, and now here we have it. How can you use the word pendatang? Do you know your country is ruled by the pendatangs? Do you know PM Wong that you are the pendatangs? From people talking about the social contract, the racial composition of Singapore, kuil haram, and 101,000 hero agama dan bangsa comments,
none of which seems to have actually gotten the point.
So no, PM Wong, this is not a problem we used to face. This is a problem that Malaysia is facing right now.
Now, you could say that this is just a stupid move.
When a lot of people were thinking about Lawrence Wong, right? Like, people just knew of him as like that one guitar-playing prime minister who went to Hague Boys School, UW Medicine, and then later went on
to become Lee Hsien Loong's principal private secretary.
It was never really a story about how, oh, somehow or another, Singapore is going to magically take off under Lawrence Wong's guidance. They were thinking, oh, I hope he won't rock the boat. But I think that the whole world started paying attention to Lawrence Wong when he came up and started talking about Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs. Just watch this.
But what the US is doing now is not reform. It is rejecting the very system it created. We are very disappointed by the US move, especially considering the deep and long-standing friendship between our two countries. These are not actions one does to a friend. The road ahead will be harder. The dangers are real, but so too is our determination. In many ways, we are in a better position than we were 60 years ago when we became independent. We've built deep reserves as a strategic buffer. We've forged a strong compact built on solidarity and trust in each other. And most of all, we have our ingenuity and wit, our grit and gumption, a never-say-die spirit that has seen us through every crisis and will carry us through the ones to come. So, Mr. Speaker, I say to this House and to fellow Singaporeans, do not fear. Now, more than ever, we will stay resolute and united. Our little red dot will continue to shine. In a dark and troubled world, Singapore will hold our ground as a beacon of stability, purpose, and hope. Thank you, sir.
Wow. You could say that they are overreacting.
Like this guy, for example. Well, is he right? Let's see. Even so though,
In a chaotic world, we need chaotic heroes. I don't remember the last time I actually felt this way when I was like listening to a world leader. Like, it is literally so rare. Like, how often can you actually hear someone addressing the nation and then coming up with the force and moral courage to be able to say what is right?
either way, I understand now.
Whoever governs Singapore must have that iron in him.
And it made sense to me, he was this generation's Iron Man, which is probably necessary given the weird world situation and its relationship with Malaysia.
For those of you who know, Malaysia and Singapore were together once upon a time. They separated a long time ago with Lee Kuan Yew crying tears in front of the camera. Now, Singapore and Malaysia are different countries now.
So therefore,
Is it foreign interference?
I don't think so.
Now, PM Wong was obviously speaking to his fellow Singaporeans. He's going out and he is assuaging the entire community regardless of race or religion, trying to diffuse a multi-dimensional conflict across the Muslim and the non-Muslim communities in Singapore.
Because racial and religious harmony are a supreme priority for Singapore. Either way, there's a lot of jealousy and hatred from Malaysia. Allow me to share a personal story.
I remember actually one moment when I was in school, I was 10 years old, and a Malay teacher actually asked me to stand up and answer a question about what country was better, Malaysia or Singapore. At the time, I didn't know anything about how people actually felt about this topic, but I remember saying Singapore. And it wasn't really for like a special reason or anything, it was literally just because I knew that the road signs were in English. Then, you know, the teacher was pissed. You know, she literally just stared daggers at me, looked me straight in the eye, and she said, "Do you know, diorang minum kencing sendiri?" That was my first experience of anti-Singapore hatred.
Which frankly is their own ideology's reward.
In Malaysia, you have some people literally saying that it doesn't matter whether he's corrupt as long as he's Malay. Janji bukan kepimpinan kafir, or something like that. On the other hand, you don't get to become a leader in Singapore because of your race, religion, or skin color. It doesn't work that way. So the difference is clear.
Not saying you need good educational qualifications to be a good politician, but
In Singapore, you have literal lineups of ministers from Harvard, while in Malaysia,
some people cannot even prove that they have tauliah to teach.
the quality is not the same, and as such, the results are not the same either. People talk about Changi Airport being number 1 13 times in total, the most awarded airport in the entire world, and immediately some bitter person is gonna come out and start talking about Othman Walk, as if somehow or another, Singapore done them dirty.
Cause it's kind of like you abandon the values that we tried to force on you and you became more successful than us.
I guess it is painful to these nationalists because of at least 2 reasons. Reason number 1, Singapore doesn't give you special treatment just because you're Malay.
After some people tried to make it Malay dominated.
And reason number 2, Singapore is much richer and much more successful than Malaysia.
Still, many of our people came from the same cultural stock.
Like Malaysia, Singapore also has Malays, Chinese, Indians, and lots of different races that are just kind of like hanging around inside Singapore. And with all that diversity comes conflict, or at least the possibility of conflict. Anyway, there was a big hoo-ha because Singapore, like Malaysia, has a Muslim population. The difference is though, when I look at Singapore, I look at an alternate history of what Malaysia could be.
There's a Malay saying, rambut sama hitam, hati lain-lain.
If only somehow or another we got over all these tired narratives about race and religion and having to have one race be above one another. I always look at all of this and I just think to myself, tak bosan ke? It is literally so infuriating day in and day out to see all these people fighting about nonsense without any seeming progress when it comes to dealing with issues. At the end of the day, all I can say is this lah. Lawrence Wong is doing exactly what Anwar Ibrahim should be doing. He is convincing every single person that they actually matter and that things that are hurtful and hateful towards any community in Singapore are things that he as the leader of the whole country needs to be able to deal with. There was a time when we used to believe that Anwar was supposed to be the ultimate multiracial prime minister and he would somehow bring us to a new era where somehow inclusiveness would be the overall tone of Malaysian society. But all that is not really forthcoming.
And the more he says we have harmony with no proof, the more disconnected he seems.
I mean, sure, you can go for 100 different types of meetings, but making the people believe that they belong, that there is a space for them under the Malaysian sun, these are also a very important part of leading the nation, Prime Minister. You can argue that Malaysia maybe is a very different society, but you can't deny that if you look at Singapore, even though it's a small country, it's respected whenever it talks about US tariffs, AI, and so many other global issues. They They went from a mudflat with basically no natural resources to becoming one of the highest GDP per capita countries in the world because they do not fight and they focus on meritocracy. Now, I must admit, right, Malaysia is not Singapore. It is a very different society, even though it's very common or popular for people to say that, like, oh, you cannot compare the societies, but like, I will say that
In Malaysia, we have a sad situation that could have been avoided.
a lot of commenters actually seem less educated, hypersensitive, don't want to be criticized, even though there was all of this affirmative action out there that somehow didn't improve their situation even as they kept on holding grudges from the cradle until the grave. Like maybe they genuinely feel that they are going to achieve a new era of ascendance once they manage to chase all the Chinese out of the country and then have a great monoculture country. But what I think is going to happen is that they are just going to lose all the investments of the country, lose the trust of the international community, make everybody turn on them, outcompete them, condemn themselves to drinking teh tarik water just above poverty level wages while never paying income tax. You'd think that somehow or another, even if they are poorer, then at least perhaps they can be more moral. But then somehow or another, if you look at all these comments out there, you see anything except adab, you see anything except morals. That is so different from what you see in Singapore, where whenever anything controversial comes out, leaders from every race and religion come out and start talking a culture where people are actually able to debate, discuss, and improve their thinking alongside the community rather than trying to shut it out under the whole torrent of Pendatang social contract.
Instead of realizing that it's not Malaysia against Malaysians, but rather Malaysia against the world.
For better or for worse, I have no idea whether Malaysia is going to change, but if it is going to change, there's a very good example down south for us to actually learn from. If for one moment the politicians of Malaysia can just stop yapping
About race and religion,
then perhaps finally we can go ahead and progress with our society. Anyway, to PM Lawrence Wong, thank you for speaking out about Pendatang. I don't know how many people out there are actually going to hear you, but truly, thank you for leading the PAP.
good luck for the general elections. Thank you for your tribute to Tun Abdullah Badawi.
And I look forward to meeting you one day. Alright, that's about it. See ya.